The Battlesmith is a subclass for the Artificer, a character class found in the Eberron Rising from the Last War sourcebook. Even though Artificers are only half casters, the spells that they have access to are fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and dive deep in this video. This is part 1 of the Battlesmith spell guide. I'm your innkeeper, Vase Odin, and this is the Twisted Tentacle Tavern. Let's go ahead and chat about the Battlesmith spells. At level 1, you learn 2 cantrips, which you have to have a set of Thieves' Tools or Artisan Tools in order to cast. In fact, all your spell casting requires this, at least initially. Later on, that does change, just like a lot of things with the Artificer. Luckily, you do start with Thieves' Tools, so this works just fine. And you can replace cantrips as you gain levels, which is pretty amazing. No other class gets this right now, so that's really amazing that you can change your role as you change levels with the Artificer, so that's pretty awesome. And for a Battlesmith, I believe this is extremely important because the role of the Battlesmith is a completely different role at level 3 than it is at level 1. So that is good that they let you do that. Let's go ahead and talk about the cantrips and their specific uses if you're heading towards a Battlesmith build. Since you only start with 2 cantrips, I do recommend making the most of it by choosing cantrips that have multiple functions as opposed to single use like just attack and damage type cantrips. So Acid Splash is one that I'd probably pass on. I like that it can hit 2 targets if they're within 5 feet of each other, but I'm not a fan of saving throw spells, especially for lower levels. With attack spells, you have the ability to crit, and I do have a video on this specific topic. You generally don't fight creatures with high AC at level 1, and at level 2, you're going to get a way to increase your spell attacks with the Enhanced Arcane Focus infusion, which you can watch the infusion videos right here. But it's only on spells that require an attack roll, so the ones that require saving throw don't benefit from that infused item. Plus, dexterity is generally not a saving throw that you want to force a save against. The good thing is that acid is not a commonly resisted damage type. I'd still avoid this spell, to be honest. Now, Create Bonfire is a much more useful spell. It basically is a better spell in every way, and on subsequent rounds, you don't have to spend an action to continue to do damage if the creature happens to stay or you find a way to keep the creature in that space. It also has some utility built in, which makes it a versatile spell to have. This is a spell I'd consider at first level. You can do damage, and you can use it for cooking food or creating light and a bunch of other uses. This is the kind of thing that I was talking about when I said to try to maximize the versatility of each spell that you get, since you only get 2 cantrips. This is a great choice. Dancing Lights is a good utility spell. It can serve many functions. Not only does it shed light and can be moved, but you can shape it like a humanoid, which can be used for a bunch of other things, like scaring or intimidating creatures, create a distraction. This is another cantrip that I'd seriously consider taking at level 1. Firebolt. If you want a good damage spell, I'd go for this one. Not only does it do good damage, but it has fantastic range, and because it is a spell attack, it has a possibility to crit. So this is one, if you just want to have like just a solid damaging spell, even though it doesn't have multiple functions, this is the one that's going to do it for you. Frostbite, this one's decent. It grants a saving throw, which generally I'm not a fan of for cantrips, but it has a nice debuff effect that can be useful. This is another one that I'd probably consider. Guidance. This is one of the best cantrips in the game, so I'd say this is almost an auto-include. I say almost because if someone else in the party is going to take guidance, like your cleric or your bard, or I think druids get it too, then let them take it. You only get 2 cantrips, so don't waste one on a spell that is going to be redundant with another party member. Find out what your other party members are going to be taking, and if someone's taking guidance, that frees up your 2 slots for some other spells that might be more useful to the group and for yourself. Light. I think Dancing Lights is a better choice most of the time. If you don't have dark vision and you're committed to other concentration spells, I'd probably take this instead since it lasts longer and it doesn't require concentration. But Dancing Lights is generally a better spell, I would say 90% of the time. So one thing you don't want to do is take both Light and Dancing Lights. That would just be a complete waste and redundant. Mage Hand is a really useful spell. This one I'd consider for its utility even at higher levels. If you don't take this at level 1, definitely consider taking it later when you get access to more cantrips. Magic Stone, this one's okay. I doubt at level 1 that you're going to be fighting things that are resistant to non-magical attacks. I'd probably skip this, to be honest. Yeah, I'd probably go ahead and skip that. Mending, this one's a situational spell. I'd probably skip this until you get to level 3, and I'll go deeper into that in the level 3 section of this video. For now, though, unless your campaign has a lot of things that are going to break, or that you're playing with things where, you know, if you crit fail, some people play if you crit fail, your weapon breaks, then Mending is probably going to be a little bit more useful in that type of campaign. Otherwise, I'd probably skip it. Message is another spell that's situational. It can be useful in the right circumstance, but mostly I'd probably skip it given the limited cantrip slots that you have. If you want to take an attack cantrip, I would also probably choose something else rather than Poison Spray. The range and damage type are enough of a limitation, but add to that the fact that it requires a concentration or a constitution save. That's horrible. Dexterity saves are very common for enemies to have really high. Constitution is almost as common as dexterity for enemies having a really high saving throw for. So why even bother with this? You do 0 damage if they succeed, which they're probably going to succeed. And then if they happen to fail, they're probably going to be resistant or immune to poison damage anyways. I would just skip it. Prestidigitation, this one's useful and fun, but for a class that only gets 2 cantrips, I'd probably skip this one until you get more slots. Let the wizard have their fun early on with the Prestidigitation. Ray of Frost is pretty good. I think Frostbite is a bit better, even though it's a saving throw spell and this is an attack roll. It contradicts what I've said, but the debuff that Frostbite has is better than the one that Ray of Frost has, in my opinion. So if you were going to choose between the two, I'd pick Frostbite over Ray of Frost. Generally, I probably would skip both of them, to be honest, but if you have to. Resistance is way too situational. Now, this one is just not going to be very useful for you at level 1. You have to know that a saving throw is going to be required within the next 10 minutes, and it only adds a d4 to the roll. I mean, I just don't recommend that you take this. It just does not seem worth it as one of your 2 only cantrip slots. Shocking Grasp, this one's useful. If you think you're going to be at the front lines especially, if you know what your party makeup is going to be, it can make it an easier choice for you. If you're going to be supporting the front lines, definitely I'd say take this one. If you're not going to be at the front lines, I'd probably skip it. Now, Spare the Dying. This one can save the life of a party member. If you don't have another party member who's going to be taking this, definitely consider it. Heck, even if another party member is going to be taking it, this is probably a good one to have if you're going to be playing a more support role in the group. I would say definitely consider this. Thorn Whip. If you're going to be on the front lines, take Shocking Grasp instead. If you're not going to be on the front lines, there's probably no reason that you're ever going to need to cast Thorn Whip and bring an enemy closer to you. So probably I would say skip this spell. Again, just to clarify, I'm not saying Thorn Whip is a bad spell, but if you're going to be playing a Battlesmith and building it in a way that's a range attacker or a support character, there's no need for Thorn Whip. If you're in the front lines, you have better options than that, and you only get 2 slots. So in the Battlesmith Artificer, it's not that good of a spell, is what I'm trying to say. It may be a good spell in other classes. The same goes for Thunderclap. Again, I think this spell is decent, but for an Artificer Battlesmith, unless you're in the rare situation that you're the sole frontline of combatant in your group, probably not the case if you're going to be an Artificer, especially at level 1, then you really don't need this, because if you're not the only front line, you're going to have someone next to you that's going to get hit by the spell. If you are the only front line as an Artificer Battlesmith, you're probably higher levels and you're going to have better options anyways. So I'd probably go ahead and skip this. Recapping the cantrip section, I highly recommend taking cantrips that have multiple uses. My short list of definites to pick from: Create Bonfire, Dancing Lights, Guidance, Mage Hand, Frostbite, Spare the Dying, and if you're a frontline combatant, Shocking Grasp. Definite no's for me for the Battlesmith Artificer: Thorn Whip, Thunderclap, Resistance, and Acid Splash. And of course, Poison Spray. Definitely not Poison Spray. In the battlefield, so in the Battlemaster, so in the Battlesmith Artificer, it's not probably a good, so in the Battlesmith Artificer, it's not that good of a spell, is what I'm trying to say. To recap the cantrip section, I highly recommend taking cantrips that have multiple uses. My short list for good cantrips are Create Bonfire, Dancing Lights, Guidance, Mage Hand, Frostbite, Spit. Papu, come on, the noise. So